Welcome to the Minimalist Educator Podcast, a podcast about paring down to refocus on the purpose and priorities in our roles, with co-hosts and co-authors of the Minimalist Teacher Book, Tammy Muziowski-Borneman and Christine Arnold.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Minimalist Educator Podcast. Thank you for joining us for one of our final episodes of Season 4. As another school year wraps up, we wanted to take a moment to slow down and reflect. It's so easy to jump straight into the next thing, but reflection is a powerful practice. It helps us notice what we've learned, how we've changed, and what we want to carry forward. So in this episode, we're sharing something just a little bit different. We are sharing letters, thoughts, reflections for our past selves back at the start of the year in September. It's our way of looking back at where we started and what the year has taught us. We've tried to be honest and personal, and hopefully it encourages you to do the same thing. Give yourself some credit for what you've been making it through this year. Let's get into it. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Minimalist Educator Podcast. I am here with Tammy. How are you today, Tammy?
Doing pretty well. How are you, Christine?
I am good. I'm very well. The sun is shining as we get towards closer and closer to summer holidays. So yes, I'm getting excited about the change in weather.
Yes, for sure. It's definitely that time of year where schools and teachers are starting to wind down in some places, with schools closing for the summer at the end of May. I know you go a little bit longer because you start later in the year, but it's still wind down time. And, all the things are happening right now, it feels like.
Exactly. Which brings us to our theme for today. Our topic today, Tammy, we are almost doing like a letter to our past selves. Dear September me, what would we say to ourselves at the start of this academic year that's just about to end? What would be the message that we would send ourselves?
Well, I think before we can do that, I kind of feel like we have to go through the roller coaster that the year has been, because, we definitely are not the same people we were a bunch of months ago. Similar, but not quite the same. There's been some good things that have happened. We've had some good interactions with people, teachers and students. And from those interactions, we discover things about ourselves and others. And so I think it's interesting that we're talking about this, because this is one of the things I ask teachers at this point in the year as we're doing year-end meetings. So, I asked them, you give me some highlights from the year. What are you proud of? Because you're not the same person you were when you started this year. You've, had some growth with students, but also professional growth. And it's pretty interesting and really cool to hear what teachers' responses are. So I think that if I'm looking at, people that I've worked with this year, I'm not going to talk about myself yet, but some of the things that teachers are saying that, this was not me several months ago was, I'm really proud of myself and the confidence I've built as a teacher over this year. And I thought, I had a couple of teachers say that, and I'm like, that's really great for you to feel a better sense of how you're teaching and what you're teaching. So that for me was actually a highlight, just having worked with a bunch of, these same teachers this year. I had another teacher say that she was really proud of how consistent she was with building in time for students to talk to each other this year too.
Okay.
So I thought that was a really good, practical type of thing, where at the start of the year, maybe that wasn't a focus for instruction, but became a really strong point of teaching throughout the year. So I thought those were some cool reflections from teachers that I heard that are top of mind for me right now. What's coming up for you?
Well, it's funny that you say you're having those conversations because after our most recent vacation break,
Mm-hmm.
holiday break, whatever you want to call it, I was talking
Mm-hmm.
to the teams about what their wins have been for the year so
Yeah.
far. And it was just so lovely to see how many of the teams were talking about a win for them had been the teamwork and the collaboration that they've had with other staff members, which I think brings us back to that idea that we always keep coming back to on this podcast is the importance of relationships and how
Yeah.
that is just such a huge part of what we do. And so I feel like that was a good reminder of that when you can feel that, that is a win for you. You feel like you've had a great year when those
Yeah.
collegial relationships are going well. So, yes, I've also been having those conversations.
Yeah. I was talking to some teachers this week I was at two schools wrapping up with them. And one school does have that time for that collaboration and building their relationships together. The other really doesn't.
Mm,
And I was thinking how that really played a role in staff morale this
yeah.
year because they didn't really have that together time unless I was with them for a PD. And so it
Mm,
was really great to work with them during some of their PD times because a lot of their meeting time had just different focus points, right? Because they're, looking at some just different school aspects where it didn't require necessarily them to collaborate together, but it was like information dissemination or, things like that doesn't really necessarily build relationships because you're just gathering information. But when we were together during PD times, I could see how much they enjoyed that because they were engaged in what we were doing and questions were being asked and there was lots of interaction. And so I think as like a Dear September me, um, as a coach, I would probably advocate more for teachers to have that time in some way,
right.
even though it had been a conversation, at different points throughout the year with administrators. But um, I think I might have been like stronger with that. Like people need to share their ideas. They need to be able to just have these different kinds of interactions between each other and talk about the successes they're having with students based on, because a lot of teachers did share with me that they did try out some of the things that we talked about, whether it was station teaching or just different discussion protocols for students. And I saw those in action. And they went really well, but they don't get a chance to share what they tried out necessarily, unless it's informal, in the hall or something. But we know that when we get that chance to have some kind of a structure for ourselves as adults in a professional learning like community, or a PD session, it builds morale. It makes people feel like, oh yeah, that was a really great idea that you had. I'm going to try that in my classroom. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think it would be something that I would advocate for more for teachers to have.
Yeah. So important.
Yeah. What else is coming up for you? Like, because I know that you had a lot going on in your role. You had accreditation this year, so you were preparing for that. And
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
that's definitely what I'm thinking about when I think back to September me. I
Hmm.
was very much aware going into this academic year that I was going to have a lot on my plate. I was
Hmm.
very, very conscious of that. And, as life goes, even more came up as we got into the year as well. So, so I mean, at school, I was leading us into this big new project. And, we've had our podcast as to keep going, as well as, another big project that I won't talk about much now, but we'll tell you all about it soon. And then stuff going on in my personal life as well that required time and effort and attention as well. So I knew before the school year had even started that this school year was going to be massive. And so I think if I'm looking back at September me, I would just say, you've got this, you can do it. And I think I was trying to have that self-talk at the time, but there's always that little bit of doubt, that little seed of like, no, you cannot do all of this at the same time. Or you might be able to do it, but you might go crazy in the attempt to do it. So I think that message of you can actually handle this, you can do this. I think that would be a huge one, a huge little encouragement that I would love to send back in time to September me for sure.
Yeah, and having worked with you this year on the podcast and our other project, I've seen the variations of you throughout this year, which, sometimes it was like, it is what it is. We're moving along. Sometimes it was not so great, but it's good to like think back that, of course you're going to be able to handle it. It's going to be hard. And thinking to your future self, next year is going to be totally different because a lot of things are off your plate. So, I mean, some things are starting to come off the plate now, which is great as you kind of wind down the year too. That's a really good reflection because I know it's been a year for you for sure.
It has. Still standing. I'm still standing.
Yeah, you are, and you're still sane and functioning.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
I'm thinking about too, some of the professional learning that I did for myself this year. And I was fortunate to be able to go to a few coaching trainings, which I found to be really helpful. So I went to a transformational coaching training. I went to the art of coaching teams, coaching for equity, and those are all from Alina Aguilar. So if you're a coach, you might be familiar with her work. And as I think back to that, I really valued the consistent approach in those learning experiences for myself. And I grabbed certain things from there and built into my own work. So like team meeting structures and questions that I used and things like that. But I would probably tell my September self to capture that learning in a way that is going to help me sustain it and use it throughout the whole year. So even though, I have the learning guides and my notes and the books and things like that, I needed at this point in the year, and not that I couldn't go back to things, but I feel like I needed a different way to ensure that I was using some of those really good questions that I was like, ooh, I want to use that, or, oh, I want to try this experience to like get teachers to think about things in a different way. And as the year's gone on, I feel like, I used the questions with teachers or like asked the questions that I felt like made sense at the time, right? But I'm wondering too, how could I have dug a little deeper with teachers if I had just captured a little bit more from my own learning and, was able to bring it, because some of that first training was in September. That was the beginning of the school year. And so, just making sure I'm kind of still sticking with those things that I've learned. And because there's some like really great activities and questions, but when I think about this this last bit of time and doing wrap-up meetings with coach or with teachers, I'm like, oh, that could have been better, because I feel like when I started the year, I was stronger because that was like just fresher for me. So, next year's a new school year. I still have a bit more coaching for the rest of this school year, interestingly, even though we're wrapping up. But yeah, something to think about for sure. Just like my own learning, capturing and implementation for a longer period of time.
Yeah,
So if you have ideas for that would be great.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because it's one of those things when you do courses or webinars or read a book, is you have to do something with it, or else it just kind of, it fades, it disappears. So you do, like, you get so motivated and excited while you're doing the thing or reading the thing, but actually transferring it and applying it and keeping it front of mind is, I think it's an ongoing challenge. And I try and remember, I worked with this wonderful teacher years ago, and she used to say, like, if she did a PD day or a course, if I just get one thing out of this, I'm happy. If I can just apply one new thing, I'm happy. And so I try and remember that, because, in the course of a day or a 2-day course, there's so many ideas, there's so many new thinking and new approaches that you can do. And like you get, sometimes you're like, oh, it's a shame that I've kind of forgotten that or missed that. But as long as you've got like that one thing that you can try and you start putting into your repertoire of tools and strategies, I think that's good.
Yes, thank you for making me feel better about myself.
I'm glad I'm here for that.
That is true. There's definitely some questions that I've kept. But like, that's the tricky thing with books too, right? And if I'm traveling to do coaching, I can't bring like all the books with me. But you know what? I can like take pictures of some pages maybe and put it in a digital folder. And refer back to, because I have some stuff written and whatever, but it's just good to revisit those pieces that I'm like, yeah, that was really good, and I forgot to keep doing that or keep asking that, or but yeah, it's such a good point. Just one thing, and that's usually what I ask teachers. What's just one thing that you're grabbing from our coaching this year that like stuck with you? Like, hello, apply that to myself.
You just have higher expectations for yourself, obviously.
Right. Yeah, so it's funny. But anything else you would tell your September self or teachers that you work with this year?
I think a huge learning thing for me, I know it might sound really basic and simple, but just being flexible and adaptable.
Yeah.
Because this year, more than any other year, I feel like things have come up that need to be dealt with or addressed or supported that have completely hijacked, for lack of a better word, what I had on my agenda. And so I've talked a lot about, imagining your top 3 priorities for the day, or imagining what done feels like for the day. And, those strategies definitely are something that I try and do all the time at work. But when you have a day where things come up and you cannot do what you thought you needed to do or you wanted to get done, if you, on top of that busy day, if you then add on a layer of frustration because you didn't get to do what you wanted to do, it makes the whole experience even more frustrating and upsetting. So if you can have a moment of like, okay, this is more important right now, I'm just going to abandon the other things that I had on my to-do list, I think it gives you a little bit of breathing room to just say, this is the priority now. And I think that has come up for me quite a few times, of like, just let it go. Just go with what's in front of you right now. And I think, that's been a big lesson for me this year, of just be flexible with it. You can't do everything. You're only one person. There's only 24 hours in the day. Just
Yeah.
go with what's in front of you that's most urgent right now, what's most pressing. And the rest will get done when it can get done. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And I often think about like, okay, when things have to get shuffled like that, I think about the things that are getting dropped and think, is anyone, and I know this is like extreme, but like, is anyone going to die from this if these don't get done? Right. And so it's kind of like when we were teaching full time and it was, the kids come to you with what seems to be an emergency, but you're like, are you bleeding? Because that's an emergency. And so kind of just tempering our own, I don't even know if it's our expectations, kind of, to realize that it's going to be there tomorrow. Right. Even things that have deadlines, that feel like, I need a deadline to like keep myself on track, but it's also a guideline. And a lot of things we can have a little wiggle room with. Some things we know we can't, and that's why we have to like make sure we build in those times to work on those bigger tasks and to ensure that we're going to, in fact, meet the deadline. But a lot of the things that we do in our roles we make them up, right? It's like, okay, this has to be done by this day to ensure that it's going to be ready for this next thing, like even writing reports or, getting things out to parents, which, feels pressing. But at the same time, I always think, well, that's a made up deadline by someone in the school, which is an important thing to have. So if someone made it up, it can also be changed if necessary. And like, you don't want to have to change things like that because you want to be consistent and you want to be reliable. But, when some things come up, sometimes you have to bump things a day. And is that going to change the course of the year? Probably not. So I think just some of that kind of time pressure too, if we could like go back and tell ourselves early in the year. And this is a thing that, we've been doing this for how many years now? Like we have to remind ourselves that it's okay if this doesn't get done today.
Exactly.
And just like you said, having to be flexible and adaptable, because that's what teaching is. Sometimes you know what the day should look like, and it just doesn't look like that for whatever reason. So it's such a good reminder, even after being in classrooms in schools for 20 something years that we've both been in. It's a lot of time in schools, and it's a consistent experience for us and for any teacher. Things just change real quick.
Yeah. And I think that's part and parcel of working with people, right? You just don't know what state everyone is going to be in from day to day. And you can't just say, excuse me, I can't deal with you being tired or not having eaten or had a family crisis because I have an agenda that I need to get through. So yeah, it's part of that human-centered work that we do, I think, is having to kind of go with the flow a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Would you say that's your pair down pointer for this episode?
Yeah, before we go to the pair down pointer, I was just thinking something else for September me is I don't, because we started gathering information for our two-parter for the podcast, the Partners of Educators. We started gathering the survey data back at the start of this academic year, right? And I don't think I realized how impactful those two episodes were going to be. I can't tell you the amount of people that have reached out to me to talk about those two episodes and how fascinating it was. I've had so many people reach out. Have you had people reaching out to you as well?
No, not for that episode.
Really?
Those episodes. Yeah, I've had emails coming in from different episodes this season which I found, like the episode with Lori and leading with love, the episode from Fred and that kind of higher
Mm-hmm.
level organizational work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Someone else emailed this week too. I'm looking at our list actually, and I can't remember what the episode was, but they had yeah, it's just funny the people that have been popping up this season with certain things, but that's so interesting that people have mentioned this to you
Yeah.
about in particular.
Yeah, people have been reaching out to say like that was fascinating to hear those results from partners of educators. And so yeah, I mean I would love to do it on a grander scale to get an even bigger data
Yeah.
set. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it seems like I'm still talking about it, even though we've been, from creating the survey and sending it out back then
Mhm.
all the way to
Yeah.
now. It feels like it's been a bit of a long haul journey, but it's so interesting to hear the impact that's had on
Yeah,
different people.
very much for sure. I mean, true, right? Like just I'm thinking about the number of conversations from this year about, just processing what's happened in your day with teachers and students, and there's a lot of mental work to unpack at the end of a day. Like
Mm-hmm.
we need people to listen to us, whether it's a partner or a friend or your dog. There's just a mental unload that needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't know if I know any teachers that don't in some way unpack, or outwardly process a teaching day. And it doesn't have to be the whole day, but it might be something that happened from the day.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's just something, because otherwise it's so hard to keep everything in your mind because so much happens during the day.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah. So pair down pointer. I think
Mhm.
thinking about all of that, about, you know, making it through a busy year or learning to be more flexible or learning from the partners of educators. I think my pair down pointer thinking about all of that would just be go gently with yourself,
Mhm.
be kind
Yeah,
and caring and don't be too hard on yourself, be
yeah.
kinder to yourself in this work that we do.
hmm Yeah, I think it's because we have high expectations of ourselves, right? And so we can be very hard on ourselves when we don't achieve what we want to. That's a good one. I would say, what's my pair down pointer? I think maybe to, I was going to kind of go back to that flexibility, but I think I think what would really help us is if we just remembered to think sometimes more simply,
Mm,
not overcomplicate what's going to be coming up, because we can really have this anticipatory anxiety about things that have not happened yet
yeah.
in a school year. And I think that, just thinking about some of the conversations I've had with teachers over this year and with myself, and actually my friends that are also in my professional network, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we just think too far ahead because that's what we do as teachers, right? We are forward planners, or forward thinking and to backwards plan. But we can really get caught up in the future. And
Mm-hmm.
so we over complicate things and look for too many resources, or well, I don't have this yet, or I don't know what to do, or what if this happens, the what ifs. And so I think if we just bring ourselves back to the moment and just think simply, what do I need right now? This goes back to a lot of our triple P work. What's the point of what I'm doing? What is my priority right now? And what's the thing Is there something that I actually need to help me accomplish this? If not, if it's just you and your mental capacity, great. Is it just asking someone a question to help you out, right? So like just thinking, keep that way of thinking as much as you can as you go through the school year, because we know that there are certain times in the year where that feels so hard.
Yeah.
So I think that's my bit.
Keep it simple.
That's right. That's right. This has been a nice year-end wrap-up conversation, I think, for this season. We've had a lot of really great conversations since January. And so it is kind of nice to just like wrap up with like, let's talk to ourselves from the past and kind of tie some things together and maybe just bring that with us to the next school year.
Let's hope so. Take some of these lessons with us into the next year.
Yes. Thank you so much, Christine. This was a lovely conversation.
As it always is. Thanks, Tammy. Today's episode was brought to you by Plan Z Professional Learning Services, forward-thinking educator support. Find out more at planzplservices.com.
Be sure to join Tammy and Christine and guests for more episodes of the Minimalist Educator Podcast. They would love to hear about your journey with minimalism. Connect with them at PlanZPLS on Twitter or Instagram. The music for the podcast has been written and performed by Gaia Moretti.